So once you've collected your two fractions out of the column, your fluoronone and your fluorine, you want to make sure that you concentrate both of those on the steam bath. So here I have the fluorine, and then this is the fluoronone, and these have been concentrated, and you can see that there is some solid formation on the glass, so that means that we do have very concentrated solutions, and so now they're ready to be used in the TLC. And what I've done is I've just pipetted off some of the solvent out of those beakers into these vials here to use, because I don't want to get any of that solid into my spots. What we also have is a mixture of the fluorine and fluoronone, and this is going to be provided to you by your TA, and so this is already prepared in a mixture of solvent ready to go. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your TLC plate, which looks like this, and it just has silica on one side, and then on the back side it's actually just aluminum. You have to be careful because these are very brittle, and you can chip the silica off of here very easily, so be gentle with them. You're also going to need to have a pencil for today, because you need to mark where you're going to put your spots. So here I have one already ready with lines. You want to draw a straight line across about 1/4 centimeter to 1/2 centimeter from the bottom. So make sure your pencil line is close to the bottom. And this is where we're going to spot our 3 different compounds or spots. And we're going to put it in solvent. You're going to be eluting with hexane, and then you're going to elute with toluene. So you need to make up 2 of these. And you're going to be bringing that solvent level up. And as that solvent moves up, it's actually going to carry the compounds with it. And when the solvent gets up to the top, near where I've drawn this pencil line, that's when you want to stop your TLC run. If the solvent gets up to the top and passes over because you weren't watching, then you're going to have to do it all again. So make sure somebody's watching the solvent climb up the plate as it's going. For the purposes of this video, I'm going to use a larger capillary tube. And you just have to be careful with the size of your capillary tube, because you want to make sure the spot isn't too big on the plate, because you don't want them to run into each other as they're going up, as they're eluting up the top of the plate. So we're going to take this, and it's going to grab more of the compound than a smaller tube would. So you can see there, probably if I hold it over the white, that we have lots of solution in the tip of that capillary tube. Now, we don't want all of this solution to go on the plate because the dot would be too big, so I'm just going to be really careful and just touch this down just like that. And so that's about the size of the spot you'll want. It's kind of hard to see right now because we don't have the UV light shining on it, but we will show you in a bit what they look like. So we're just going to do the same thing for the other 2 compounds. So we have the fluorine is next. You want to make sure that you're using a new capillary tube for each compound, otherwise you're going to end up getting a mixture, and that's going to defeat the purpose of the separation that we just did. So make sure you're using a fresh one. There we go. And I'm also going to spot the other plate at the same time, because we do need to make 2 of these. So there we go. And I'll go back and put the mixture on that second plate as well. Then we just have the fluoronone left to do. We're just going to grab a little bit of that on the capillary tube, and we're going to spot that in the last spot. So I'm just going to take that here and put a spot maybe a little bit bigger just to match the other ones. And that's all we need to do. Okay, so we're going to shine the UV light onto the plate just to see where our spots are. And also, if you're ever using a UV handheld lamp, make sure that you don't shine this in anyone's face. It's very damaging to vision. So we want to make sure it's pointed at the bench the whole time. And this will just let us see where our spots are. We're going to use this once more once the plate has been eluted, once we've put the solvent front up, and then we'll be able to see where our compounds end up. And you can see that we have our 3 different spots. There's the mixture, then we have our fluorine, and then the fluorinone. And I'm just going to use a pencil to actually trace the outline of those spots so that we know where they started. So when we're ready to do the elution or run the TLC plate, we're going to take a small beaker. We have a 50 ml beaker here, and you want a watch glass to go on top, so you don't want all your solvent to evaporate before your TLC plate has run. So we're going to take this, and we're taking some hexane, and what we're going to do is just add enough solvent just to cover the bottom of the beaker. So and here, for the 50 ml beaker, actually 1 ml is good enough. And I don't know if you can see the level there. You just need enough solvent that it's going to cover the bottom and enough to climb up the plate. But it is also very important that the solvent level on your TLC plate, if you stick it in the beaker, we don't want the solvent to go over top of the dots, because then the compound is just going to dissolve into the solvent and it won't elute up the plate, and you'll end up with a big smear on your whole plate. So you want just a thin layer. And when you're placing your plate into the beaker, we want to make sure that you're putting it in straight. If you put it in at an angle, your dot's going to start to go up, and then if you bring it down flat, then it will go up, and so you'll end up getting this big curve. So you want to do your best to make sure that this is all even and that the solvent actually travels up the plate perpendicular to your plate. So we're going to put it in here now. And actually, if you have a pair of tweezers handy, this might help to make sure that we're putting it in straight, and then you don't have to have your fingers in the beaker. So we're just going to put it in there. And so now it's starting. And you can see that the solvent is actually climbing up the plate. So once the solvent front has come up to about where that line is, we're just going to remove it from the beaker there. And before the solvent evaporates, you want to mark precisely where it was when you took it out. And for us, it was actually right at that line, so that's good. And you can see that it didn't take very long for that solvent to evaporate, so you want to make sure you're ready to mark it right away. Once we've finished eluting our plate and all the solvent has evaporated, we're ready to look at it again under the UV light. And you're going to want to take your pencil and actually trace any of the spots that you see on there. So we're going to do this. We're going to shut off the light and turn the UV on. And you can see on the plate I've already marked where they are, because there's a little excess light in here and I'm not sure how easily it's going to be able to see on the camera. But here we can see that we have a dot from where we put a mixture. This is where we had our fluorine, and then this is where we had our fluorinone. And as we eluted, you can see that the spots actually didn't end up right above where it was. So the elution actually went a little bit angled, and that's because the back of the TLC plate, because it's made of aluminum and it's flexible, it's hard to get a straight edge, and so the solvent front does often move. So you might have to take that into account when you're looking at your resultant plate. So here, what you can see is that we have 2 yellow dots on the solvent line where we spotted them, and that is our fluorinone. So we have fluorinone here, and where we had spotted with fluorinone, you can see that it's moved up a little bit, and that's because the fluorinone is partially soluble in the hexane, but not as much as the fluorine. And the fluorine is these spots up here, so the fluorine actually traveled up the plate. And so this is our separation. So we can see that in the mixture we have our 2 different components. In the fraction that we had The fluorine, we just have one spot that's moved or traveled further down on the plate through with the hexane. And then the third component, the fluorinone, has not moved very far at all, so it's still pretty much at the line. And so this is what a successful separation looks like with the column chromatography. So that's the end of experiment 6, chromatography. You just have to remember that you're doing a TLC plate for hexane and for toluene, because you're going to want to discuss the difference in results that you're going to see there. And just a hint, it's because of the polarity of the solvents. And before next lab, you're going to want to run an IR of each of the fractions that you have collected. And you also want to make sure that you take your 2 TLC plates that you've eluted, and you actually want to make a sketch of them in your notebook, because these aren't safe to take home. So you're going to want to draw these out in your notebook exactly as they are, and make sure that you write down all the measurements, because you're going to need the measurements in order to calculate your RF value, which also needs to be done before next class.